Wolf Pack, what's going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Rose Street, RoseStreetJournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves here with one of my favorite guests of all time, the most recurring guest on the Fantasy Fullback Dive, the record holder himself, the legendary Ian Hartitz, PFF's lead fantasy analyst, the host of the phenomenal PFF Fantasy Football Pod, alongside Dwayne McFarland, who carries other prestigious titles like the president of the Cordarrelle Patterson Fan Club. My man, Ian, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm so excited to talk ball again. How you doing, brother?
Always love, getting in with the wolf pack. Usually, I got Dwayne McFarland these days, so I'm not quite the same lone wolf. But man, it's been good to talk to you. Definitely over the years, you've come on the PFF Fantasy Pod, I believe, several times as well. So always appreciate. I've appreciated your grind in the industry, man. Just you just really putting this whole company on your damn back from day one, being committed to it, and not being afraid to just have a rational decision out there. There's a lot of people these days really trying to stand out, and there's nothing wrong with that, but just being true to yourself, and at the end of the day, trying to put logic ahead of just trying to have the hottest take out there. I think it's a good general process. You do a good job of that, man. So happy to talk some ball here as usual.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate those words, man. And right back at you. Nobody grinds harder. I saw you just recently broke the 100K follower club, huh? Is that right? Look at you go, man.
We got there, and absolutely nothing changed in my life, but it was fun getting the nice congrats text from like my mom and shit, I guess. But, yeah, man, still wake up, gotta take the dogs out and all that, but I appreciate it, man.
It's still awesome, man, though. You've grown and well-deserved growth, too. It's awesome to see. You're killing it over there at PFF, man. And it's always one of the most fun podcasts chatting with you every year. So I'm so fired up. It's been too long since we've linked up, man. So I'm excited to dive in today. We're going to be previewing your ultimate 2020 fantasy football playbook. Me and Ian will give you round by round strategy, targets, fades, all that good stuff. So you can head into your 2022 drafts knowing what you need to look for in every single round. We won't hit all of Ian's picks. You got to go find those at pff.com/fantasy. Of course, are also on his podcast. Is there anything else that you boys are chefing up over there at PFF, though, that you want to promote before we dive on in?
Bro, we got our app coming out here soon. The beta has been out there. We sent out the link a few times for people to be able to try it out. But like one of the features we have is this whole new fantasy platform in there where it's going to give you guys the premium stats you want for all different types of, just in terms of the workload, the talent, the offensive environment, the matchup, easy chart basically that has all of that in one with our rankings. And helping things is like basically like what I tried to do in this article was more or less prepping for the draft experience. So you're going to be able to actually go round by round and almost pick by pick, get myself, Dwayne McFarland, Nathan Yonke, Kevin Cole's actual strategy for us. So keep an eye out for that, man. I can't wait. This is it's Pro Football Focus. When we came in, it was just such a more so real life premium football stats and things like that. But over the years, I think the original founders have kind of started to see when, funny how in August, September fantasy season kind of tends to get that bottom line moving up in the right direction. So really starting to get some investment from, the top of the company. And I'm, again, just very excited about what we have coming up here.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you guys have grown that product. So it's just improving it year by year. It's amazing what you guys do. So I can't wait to check that app out. Everybody else out there, make sure you check it out too. Well, let's dive on in, Hartitz, to our round by round preview here. And before we get into like the actual strategy, the picks and whatnot, we're seeing more often than ever people being able to kind of draft your slots, whether it's like Kentucky Derby, your horse wins, and now you get the pick of whatever pick you want. It's not necessarily you're automatically slotted into number one pick here. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe it's not. But do you have a favorite draft position of them all for 2022?
I saw someone have a good graph or tweet. Might have been Scott Barrett. He always has some good shit going out there anyway. So if it wasn't him, then shout out to Scott regardless. But I think it was bringing up the point that top 3 or top 4 picks just over time, like you want to draft earlier. If there's a third round reversal, then maybe we can have a conversation about trying to get at the turn instead. But I think in general, securing one of those top 4 picks, getting yourself one of Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Cooper Kupp, or Justin Jefferson, depending on I'm not too worried about the Matthew Stafford stuff yet, but we'll see if there is an update on that and it becomes a real concern, then maybe we can say top 3, between those 2 running backs and Justin Jefferson. But that's been my preferred so far, man, because everyone else is ballers, but to me, those are the 4 players that truly don't really have a red flag. And maybe a perfectly healthy Christian McCaffrey gets hurt out there, but the same thing could happen to anyone out there. So I'm sure we'll talk plenty about the injury stuff, but if you have a sound process or something for predicting injuries and you are actually assigning out games like to each player, then maybe I'll listen to your argument with it. But man, the people that I do see doing that, shout out Draft Sharks and their injury predictor and history tool. Like they take it more seriously and they're more analytical about it than anyone. And when I see Jonathan Taylor predicted to miss like 1.6 games and McCaffrey's at 1.8, hey, I'm going to take that added injury risk there. So that's just, kind of my thought process with these top 4 players putting away our inability to predict future injuries. I think McCaffrey, Taylor, Kupp, Jefferson, you're going to be awfully happy if you get to start your draft with one of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think it might be Adam Levitin you might be thinking of. He had a great tweet about how anywhere in the top 4 is a beautiful spot to land. The round 2 talent seems to be very similar at the beginning of round 2 as it is at the end of round 2. So you get 2 of those guys, the round 2-3 turn plus a top 4 talent. I'm with you. This definitely is a good year to be at the top. So hopefully y'all get there for sure. And as we move into our picks and strategies, if you guys don't mind hitting that thumbs up button, hearts, retweets, wherever you're at, watching this, sharing it out, helping the Wolfpack grow. It is so greatly appreciated, everybody. Thanks again for being here and tuning in for your lunch hour here on Monday. All righty, round 1. As we were just talking about the top 4, it's sexy. It's great to be up there. But either way, it's crucial to get it right. It's real hard if you get a bust in round 1 to make it to your championship. Obviously, you're a little bit locked into where your pick position is, but do you have kind of an overall position you're targeting more often than not? And then we'll talk about some players, fades, and all that good stuff too.
I find myself, and this is really for the first 3-4 rounds, man, there does seem to be an unusual amount of potential 3-down workhorse running backs available like early in these drafts. And we're talking about Derrick freaking Henry, the big dog, being available at like 108, 109 in a lot of these drafts now. And I think too many folks are, almost again, just kind of drafting scared a little bit at the top, or just maybe I'm paying too much mind to just random Twitter commentators, because when I hear people saying, oh, this isn't the year, I'm not taking McCaffrey, you can't do this. Bullshit, man. If you see that dude available past the first like 3 picks, I'm sure you're hitting draft in a second. But I'll just say, after as someone, and there's different strategies for redraft versus best ball, I get that, but I've done probably 50 to 60 best ball drafts at this point since the draft was over. And just generally, I feel a lot better about the squads where I have at least 2 running backs through the first 4 rounds. So I think running back, wide receiver, I think Kelsey at the turn is fine. I think Mark Andrews pretty much at the round 2 turn can be okay. Kyle Pitts, if basically all your sure thing wide receivers are gone and a lot of the running backs, then all of a sudden he starts to become into play. So I do think there's the right draft spot. And again, I think around 1, which we're on right now, Travis Kelce at the turn, I would be happy to take him there because dude, just 150 targets. I don't care if he takes a step back. Like, it's just, he's playing a different position than the other tight ends because of the huge target gulf between these guys. I mean, you look at PFF fantasy projections. I think Kelsey's at around 145 targets. Andrews is at like 136. The next closest tight end is like under 110. So it's just truly, it's, the way that rushing quarterbacks are and receiving running backs, like that's just Kelsey and Andrews just being like the undisputed number 1 pass game option, not just number 1 tight end. That's kind of like the fantasy cheat code that we have there. So overall, again, probably prioritizing running backs a little bit more than the wide receivers, particularly after I would say the big 5 in Kupp, Jefferson, Chase, Diggs, and CD. Maybe you can throw Devontae Adams in there. I'd probably throw Devontae Adams in there too. After that, they're not serious red flags, but we have guys like Tyreek, Debo switching teams, T. Higgins, who's a legit, number 2 wide receiver on his own team. So at that point in the draft, give me the Fournettes, the Saquons, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, all those guys ahead of those wide receivers. So long story short, really liking the running backs, but hey, all these guys are great. There's no reason to, be a hero this early in the draft. Don't be afraid to let the value come to you, because to your point earlier, like when you get one of these first 4 draft picks, the guys that are coming around in round 2, even if it's not the exact running back you're looking for, you're still going to be dealing with a lot of good players.
Absolutely. I'm with you 100%. I've been hammering the bell cows myself. Scott Bear had a great article of that anatomy of a league winner. He dives into it. 12 of the last 20 quote unquote league winners, the highest advance rate type players, have been running backs, 60%, and almost all of them go in the early rounds too. It's very difficult to find those late round blowups. I know last year we had Connor, we had Fournette, but those seem to be more outliers. It's not very common you do. So I do typically find myself hammering the bell cows. You mentioned Jefferson, Kupp, even Chase in round 1. It's tough to pass on that. And of course, Kelsey at the turn, is him and Andrews, the gap seems to be closing, but ultimately, what if the Ravens go back to that run heavy? It seems like everything's pointing towards that. So he might be a regression candidate in target sense as well. So I think the gap's maybe even a little bit bigger. You remove Tyreek, so it might just get more targets for Kelsey, less for Andrews too, widening that gap. So he's also a guy I really like, but I'm hammering the bell cows. I try to come out of my first 2 rounds. And you even hinted at that for round 2 follow-up, that you love the Saquons, you love the Fournettes, these every down backs. Is there one in particular that you really like and you're hoping for that falls to you in round 2?
I would, man, again, depending where I'm at, Saquon Barkley's been someone I'm just not afraid of at all. Like, I have him ranked as my RB8 overall, and usually he's kind of going closer to the turn there. So I would say Saquon and Fournette are kind of the 2 guys in round 2 that I find myself consistently getting the most. And it's just because once you kind of sit down, you start doing the projections, and this is, guys, you're doing the rankings all year long like I am, man. It's funny when how like you're higher on someone like Saquon in March or so, and people really scoff at you. But then they do their projections in May after the draft, and it's like, yeah, who else is going to get this ball in the offense? And same thing with Leonard Fournette. So last year, only Christian McCaffrey I was averaging more receptions per game than Leonard Fournette. Yeah, I'm not hating on Rachaad White, but he's still a 3rd round rookie running back. We only have to go back 2 years to find the last time the Buccaneers took a running back in the 3rd round and didn't use him. They paid Leonard Fournette over $20 million, man. That's the other thing. It's not like they just brought back Fournette on like a Melvin Gordon late offseason contract and then drafted Rachaad White. Like, they paid Leonard Fournette, man, after he was kind of visiting some other places. Yeah, they added White, but my God, like, White might not even beat out Giovanni Bernard right now. It just seems like a classic situation of us really overthinking a guy that's been out there in a lot of rookie drafts. Dynasty folks love him, and maybe he is great, but man, it's just, when Leonard Fournette's out there, he's just the epitome, and Saquon Barkley, of some of these running backs where we rank them RB12, RB13. But then when week 1 comes around and actually, comes time to play, we're going to be like, I don't know if there's more than 5 or 6 running backs that we can even be ranking ahead of these guys to begin with. So Saquon, Fournette, and to a lesser extent, he's more of a 3rd round guy, James Conner, and arguably Cam Akers, round 4, but we'll see. We'll talk about him in a minute. These are guys that to me have round 1 workloads, but they're discounted because they're a little bit older. In Saquon's case, we're not thrilled about the Giants offense. Fair enough things, but man, at running back, again, when it comes down, when it's week 8, we're just saying, hey, Dearness Johnson is about to get 20 plus touches. Like, our RB1 over here. It seems to be more so in the summer and August and months like these that we, overweight the importance of some of these other factors. So when in doubt, chase that volume, particularly when it's as cemented as it is in round 2 with Saquon and Lenny.
Absolutely. Lenny's one I've come around to. I was a little bit lower on him entering the offseason, but too many sharp people are in. And then just the more and more you learn about 80% guy in a Tom Brady offense, like, there's no need to overthink that. 80% of the running back touches, 80% of the snaps. As much as I like White, handcuff him then. If you love White, like, it's going to be a beast. It's a great role, maybe the best role in fantasy besides Christian McCaffrey, as you mentioned. So I've come around on him. The other guy I've started to really hammer. I was getting him in round 3 for a while with the scare of the suspension, but Alvin Kamara, I mean, the fact that you can now get him in round 2, and if there's no suspension, the guy was running back 4 in his games with Jameis Winston on a complete shit offense. I mean, Marquez Callaway, the next most threatening player last year, and he still was right around 20 fantasy points per game in that offense. Now you get the other guys back. Maybe that takes a little bit of his workload off, but he'll be right back to that. I mean, 3 of the top 15 points per touch of all time, like the most efficient guy out there. Scott Barrett, I had him on last week. I know I keep referencing him, but that's he's fresh on the brain. He came on last Wednesday, and he has him at running back 3. And I mean, as long as he doesn't get suspended, that guy's going to be a potential league winner. So I really like Kamara.
I should have listened to my own article here where I said upside of nailing the Kamara situation is tantalizing. We're shooting for the moon. So yeah, you can actually, I mean, again, depending on the draft, I think now that more and more with the latest legal update, the September 29th hearing, I think it is now more and more likely that no suspension happens until 2023, if at all. hey, round 2, man, that's fine with me. It was fantastic being able to get him in round 3, round 4 there for a bit. I have a feeling though, by it's one of those situations where I'm going to try to consistently be a little bit ahead of the curve. That's the only tricky things with rankings. And I know Scott's a good drafter and everything, so I'm sure he adjusts to it. But that's the only thing we'll be careful on. Like, don't take Kamara in round 1 if we can get him in round 2, round 3. Exactly. So that's the only tricky part with the rankings and how you got to bake ADP into them sometimes. But yeah, same thing. Like same reasoning with Saquon and Fournette. Guys that are being ranked RB10, RB12 could be RB3 by week 1. Seriously.
Absolutely. Is there anybody in those first 2 rounds? We haven't really talked about fades yet. Is there anybody that you're kind of off of when this name comes to you, just never find yourself drafting them?
Nick Chubb. I hate to be the fade Nick Chubb guy, but the Watson situation continues to be iffy. And even without it, man, he's just one of the biggest overperformers in the league. And it's just one of those situations that I'm not that thrilled about continuing to just make a leap of faith on. They have Kareem Hunt there. Even when Kareem Hunt wasn't there, man, like last year, even removing the last 2 games of the year where Chubb was hurt and it was a meaningless week 18 game, Chubb averaged 17.5 touches per game with Kareem Hunt and like 17.4 without. His workload didn't change because they just put the Ernest Johnson in the pass down roles. And it sucks because even if Chubb's not Hunt level good as a receiver, he can catch the ball in the flat, right? But they don't give him a chance. So it's one of those things where if Chubb needs to continue to be the best running back in the league for him to be like a borderline RB1 in PPR points per game. It's silly, but it's the game we play. And, again, when you look at his expected workloads, he's like an RB3. Honestly, I think he was RB21 last season, and he was RB27 the year before. So really the workload, it's just so tough on him. It's similar to me. It's kind of why I'm fading Deebo Samuel a little bit too, just where I have him ranked because, we look at his points per game before and after having the running back role really become a major part of his game. And it was 21 PPR points per game in weeks like 1 through 9, weeks 10 to the NFC Championship. It was 20. So it was like, who cares? It's only a difference of 1 point per game. He was killing it. But again, that expected points, man, as a pure wide receiver, it was 17.4 expected PPR points per game. As more of a primary running back, 12.9. Like I just tweeted out a chart today showing yards after contact, missed tackles forced per carry, the exact stats that, Javonte Williams truthers are jerking themselves off to every single day. Deebo Samuel's like on a different part of the graph, man. He was truly the most efficient rusher in the entire league last year, and he did it once. Maybe he can do it again, but I just really feel like Nick Chubb, Deebo Samuel, I think they're being priced more so based on the great accomplishments they've been able to have over the past few years than what we should necessarily think that's going to happen this year based on their opportunity. And to be fair, man, that 49ers offensive line, I don't think it's as big of a guarantee to be dominant. And obviously Jacoby Brissett at quarterback for who knows how long, that could tank the entire offense. So I think Chubb and Deebo, just give me the guys with a bigger workload because I think they have some red flags that probably aren't being considered as much as they would be if they just hadn't been so damn good over the last year or two.
It's the classic, the love the talent, hate the situation. I'm 100%. Both those guys are on the ones I just don't find myself drafting, particularly Chubb. He averages 3.5 more points per game in wins than losses. So if we knew Watson was playing, I'll go right back to the well. I'll readjust my rankings, but it's seeming like it's going to be a full year. They seem pretty hell-bent on getting there. And so at that point, who wants to be in a Jacoby Brissett hellhole? Like it's the fucking worst offense in the world. I don't want to be there. And Hunt's damn good. Like all this trade speculation, hopefully he goes somewhere. Match him on the Bills or like, there's so many situations where he would be right back into the top 10 running backs in fantasy should he go there. But he actually outscored Chubb 6 of their 8 games together 2 seasons ago. Last year when they were both fully healthy through the first 5 weeks, he had more points per game than Chubb. I mean, he just has the receiving work, and we know that 3 times as valuable a target compared to a carry. And as good as Chubb is, maybe one of the most fun players to watch in all of football as a pure runner, it's just not that valuable for us fantasy folks. So, yeah, I'm with you. He's the one that I definitely am gravitating towards.
Are you buying a ton of Hunt then? I have been.
Yeah, I mean, because you get him in round like 9, 10. I mean, why not? If you want a piece of this backfield, absolutely, I'm going there.
I don't know who trades for him and like his value really drops anymore. Like, I don't think you're looking at a guy that's going to fall more. Like, who would trade for Kareem Hunt to make him like a distant backup RB3? So, and then there's the chance that if he goes like to a Buffalo or like the Rams or someone, or reunion with the Chiefs, like who the hell knows? But even if some of those are more possible than others. Like, as great as Nick Chubb is, all those stats, man, you don't have to go down many names to find Kareem Hunt right after him. And to be fair, Dearness Johnson last year, was popping on a bunch of these. So I never have quite bought into the trade stuff. And it seems like based on Hunt, hopping back in the team drills and Browns reportedly saying it's not going to happen. Like, why would they, man? He's on an affordable contract because of his past. Like, they're in a situation where they're going day by day with the Watson situation, but clearly you look at some of the other 1-year deals they've had. Like, this is a team trying to win a Super Bowl in the year 2022, and having Kareem Hunt on your football team like makes you a better football team. So I've always thought, if anything, like, if you feel better if you think Jerome Ford can be as good as Dearness, then go ahead and trade Dearness. But getting rid of Kareem Hunt, man, that's never made sense to me.
No, not at all. So yeah, we'll track that one for sure. Obviously, the rankings will adjust, but as you mentioned, even without Hunt, it's not like Chubb, because like everybody's gonna shoot him up the moon, and he just hasn't been all that valuable, whether he should be used as a receiver or not. Javonte, you mentioned him too. Javonte threw the jerking off. I love that line. Ultimately, he's a guy that I have a little bit trouble on, not because of the talent. Another situation where Melvin Gordon outscored him in 10 to 16 games last year, had actually more fantasy points per game. I do think that flips significantly this year. I do think Javonte will be more highly used, but another running back that just, you're looking at Fournette getting 80% of the work, or Javonte getting 55 or 56 point cents, like whatever the charts are saying these days in practice. My fucking God, whatever it is. It's another tricky one for me too. And you mentioned a name I actually might have ahead of Javonte going in round 3. That's James Conner. I do love him in round 3. I've been going a lot of drafts. I actually have started running back. It's the first year I've done that in quite some time. But to me, Connor's presenting a really interesting opportunity to do that. So you mentioned him. What do you like about him? Is there other guys in round 3 you really like too?
It's just even before Chase Edmonds got hurt, we were just seeing the immense upside that Connor had, just from scoring touchdowns and a really good offense. And I love when I'll tweet something and like one of the beat writers will send me some little tidbit. Like, imagine that, man, like a beat writer actually just supplying some extra information when applicable, instead of just retweeting the team account or some bullshit. But any beat writers out there, I love you guys. I'm just talking shit. But okay, what and I forget who said it, but basically they brought up the point where the Cardinals don't really trust Kyler Murray to QB sneak. He's only done it one time his entire career, and when they've had Chris Streveler and the Colt McCoy out there, they've done it like 4 or 5 times in like 2 or 3 games like that they've actually been out there. So it really seems to have been a conscious choice not to have Kyler do the QB sneak. So James Conner is someone that when you see all these touchdowns, and everyone after a player, Conner had 18 touchdowns last year, so people just yell, oh, he's a regression candidate, because people think they sound smart, and it's just it's easy way of saying like, yeah, he's had Cooper Kupp's going to regress because he's probably not going to have the greatest wide receiver season ever again. It's like, oh, thanks, man, like doing me a lot of favors here. But with Conner, like, if you look at the role he had, man, and without Edmonds, my God, 6 games, RB1, 17, 7, 12, 2, 1. Again, like, his workload is again being set up to just be someone that really would be a first-round running back, but we're not taking him there because he's, been a guy a little more injury prone than others. And I have heard doctors, bring up that due to his, past being a cancer survivor and everything, he is a little more injury prone than other guys. But man, you look at some of these running backs, and if the only reason why we're not drafting them is if they get hurt, and we're not talking about someone already hurt, there's a big difference. But what if they don't get hurt? Then you win? That's not bad, man. If like you're able to, because think about it, we're playing a 12-team league, so that's giving us 0.8 or whatever. It's giving us an 8% chance to win theoretically, or whatever, if we're dividing it by 12. You're telling me there's a running back that where my chances are going to skyrocket if I get one other decision right? That's a bet I'm going to be willing to take, I think. So guys like Conner, even someone like Cam Akers in round 4, I just think the potential workload on the line is way too much to ignore. I had a study go up on PFF.com looking at the play callers and who's like most willing to actually feature a workhorse running back. And behind, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Matt Canada and stuff. And even before him, man, we've just always seen Pittsburgh feature, time after time. So other than Pittsburgh, man, Arizona and Los Angeles Rams, Sean McVay, have really been the two teams most willing to feature the workhorse running backs. And we've seen that with Cliff, man. David Johnson, before, his tires blew out. Chase Edmonds, he was getting featured 90% roles when James Conner was out of the picture. Kenyon Drake before that. So again, it's just about the role. And in Connor's case, no, I don't think he's like a Jonathan Taylor talent, but we still saw some flashes out of him. And that one-handed touchdown catch against the Bears, like, I don't think the dude's washed by any stretch. So I think a lot of these concerns are why he's available in the third round in the first place. So yeah, if he was a first round running back, I'd probably take the guy I'm a little less worried about getting hurt. But again, in round 3, I really like Connor in lineups where I've already got a couple wide receivers, because again, I think he can easily be an RB1 for you if he's healthy. If not, again, first or last, baby.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. All those points. And to steal some from a tweet you had earlier this year, number 3 graded receiving running back, 37 of 39 targets caught, PFF's highest graded pass blocking back. I mean, The risk is if he loses that role and Benjamin sneaks in, because that's Edmonds was eating into that work, but there's no way you're taking off Connor for Benjamin, in my opinion. All the hype he's getting, I don't know. I can't buy it. Plus, you could just draft the backup, whether you think it's Daryl, whether you think it's based on this recent hype, who knows? It's very crucial to find out, given Connor's injury history. But we know, as you mentioned, Kingsbury loves his workhorses. If he goes down, somebody else is going to be fed, and it's going to be a great offense that you'll probably get 80% of Connor in round 16 too. So maybe I love it. I absolutely love that pick indeed. So yeah, I don't have much else to say. I think it's a great stab there. Whether you go running backs early, whether you go receivers early, there's just too much upside. Plus Kingsbury and McVay, they're all kind of that same breed of offense too. So yeah, I love that.
How are you feeling about Kyle Pitts in round 3? That's the one that gets me sometimes, because I do think if the right combination of players are gone, if Connor's gone, so it's like your top 14 or 15 running backs are gone, and then your top 13, 14 wide receivers. The Chargers guys are gone. AJ Brown's gone. Michael Pittman's gone. Like, once it becomes Kyle Pitts versus guys like, Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, Marquise Brown, I was talking about this on the PFF Fantasy Pod with Dwayne McFarland, but you could start to argue that it's Kyle Pitts with a similar kind of receiving projection to some of these wide receivers he's going next to. And at that point, man, especially again, if we're talking a little bit later, round 3, then by that logic, we're then getting an earlier pick in round 4. Like, give me Kyle Pitts, and one of these kind of wide receivers that we have lumped into the same tier is probably going to fall to you in the early parts of round 4 anyway. So that's another reason why I've really enjoyed taking the running backs, because I do think there's a pretty clear top 12, 13, 14 wide receivers, but man, once you get to kind of that wide receiver 14, 15 points. If you want to give Michael Pittman benefit of the doubt, go ahead. Like, he's a dog. I get it. So, if we'll just say like Terry McLaurin to Allen Robinson, like there's 10, 12 receivers there that are just like, I can see it, but I could also not see it, because there's like a pretty glaring red flag, and we all have our rankings. We have guys we prefer in that, but I think we should also be able to look at that group and realize that it is a tier. And when you have that big of a tier, don't be afraid to take the tight end that may never be this cheap again, or one of the workhorse running backs that, again, probably should be going earlier based on their projected workload.
I think Pitts is an awesome name. I'm glad you tossed him out there. I was going to follow up with him, actually. So perfect timing, synced up there. I'm 100% in lockstep with you. Once Connor, even over Connor, sometimes if I really like my 2 running backs, it's such a huge, massive potential edge. He just had a really impressive rookie season at one of the hardest positions to make the leap to, with nobody else. He was doing better when Calvin Ridley was there to draw a little bit of attention. I love that they drafted Drake London, particularly in the red zone. It could free him up again. It's asking a rookie tight end to take on the number 1 corner of a team each and every week. And he was succeeding certain weeks too.
That's a Dolphins game, man. He looked good against X and Byron Jones. I mean, hell.
Absolutely. Yeah. He can get it done. He's an absolute freak profile. I really think he's going to be going round 1, like kind of like replacing Kelsey as the heir apparent come next year. And people, Mariota, how could he succeed with him? Delaney Walker was the tight end 3, tight end 5, and tight end 4, 133, 102, and 111 targets across his 3 seasons with Mariota. Hadn't done anything before that. And Delaney's the man, a great player, love him, but he's not kind of fucking Pitts. Like, Pitts is an absolute freak, the Megatron comparison. So I'm 100% with you. I think he is a great round 3 target, particularly if you have 2 running backs. And as you mentioned, we're looking at ADP, and we should have said this at the top, is it does obviously vary from underdog to like your home leagues, because there's going to be some receivers we talk about in like the round 5 through 7 range that just won't be there at underdog.
Right.
Like Allen Robinson, like, I don't know how those guys are there at round 5, but that makes me that much more confident to take a guy like Pitts that will probably put up wide receiver 1 numbers at one of the toughest positions to find. So yeah, if I miss out on, I don't draft Mark Andrews very often because I'd much rather have a round 3 Pitts than him. So yeah, I'm all in on Pitts. If I'm not going running back, it's probably because I went Kyle Pitts in round 3. So great name to toss out there as well. I've seen him even fall to round 4 as we transition over to round 4. You mentioned Akers as somebody you like. If you want to dive into your case for him or anybody else that you really like, is this where you start maybe tapping into some receivers? And if so, who are you looking at?
I see how you have round 4 labeled RB dead zone. And I think it kind of is across more redraft sites. Like for this article, I use Fantasy Pros' consensus ADP. It took out, if you want to use their consensus PPR ADP, I think just taking out fantasy football calculator for now, not to hate on them forever, but just take that out, take out NFL.com, and it gives you much more clear rankings. But you see these running backs like Antonio Gibson, Josh Jacobs, really up into round 4, round 5. And like, yes, that is the dead zone in that case. And like, even like Miles Sanders, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, some of these other guys in rounds 4, round 5.
Disgusting.
No. Yeah. And that's why it was the RB dead zone last year. But I will say an underdog, and I wonder, underdog is 3 wide receivers, so it's a little bit different, and it's best ball, so different strategy and scoring. But man, there's a lot more wide receivers you feel good about than some of these running backs after you kind of hit that dead zone. So all I'm saying is that guys like Jacobs, Gibson, we don't like them in round 4 and round 5, but I say all the time, don't hate the player, hit the ADP. If we start seeing dead zone running backs going in round 6, 7, 8, all of a sudden they're not in the dead zone. They're, mid to late round running backs that we can get behind more. Like Cordero Patterson is someone that I would consider a dead zone running back in round 4 or 5, just like Mike Davis was last season. But when Cordero Patterson's going round 8 or 9, that's much more reasonable, particularly on rosters where you're taking guys like Mike Williams or Michael Pittman or Terry McLaurin in round 4. So that's just would be my thing here. Like, I think the way the draft is set up, like there's so much room to fill any position of need in round like 7 through 11. You can still get pretty high quality players across every single position. So don't, even if you leave, first 3 rounds only with 1 running back or something, like don't reach on someone like a Jacobs or Gibson just because you need to. So that'd be my big strategy there. But yeah, Cam Akers, man, again, just, the Sean McVay stat real quick. Last year, it was Najee Harris had 11 games with at least 80% of the offensive snaps. No other running back had more than 5, but both Darrell Henderson and Sony Michel hit 5 games, in their respective tenures as the Rams lead RB1. So every time Akers has been out there, man, he's just been featured. And when you get to round 4, it's like, even if he doesn't have the 90% snap rate or workload, like you're telling me he couldn't just score double-digit touchdowns as the relatively lead back, with a sort of like Javonte Williams split. Like Cam Akers is basically like, being treated as like a not good Javonte Williams, which I think that's okay in round 4. Like I'll sign up for that. And God forbid the guy is a little bit healthier, this time around. I think there's a lot of upside there with Cam Akers. I think Graham Barfield, fantasy points over with Scott Barrett, made a good point where you could argue Akers is actually being priced a lot closer to his floor than ceiling. And I like Darrell Henderson where he's going too. I think both Rams running backs are really underpriced. I've consistently been going out of my way when I don't get Akers to get Henderson later.
Yeah, get one of them for sure. I mean, the guy saw 19.25 opportunities when he came back 6 months from a torn Achilles in the playoffs. Like, come on. No shit, he didn't look that great or explosive, but they still fed him. I think that was very indicative of what they would like to do for the future as well. So yeah, I like Akers at his price. Of course, an Achilles injury is worrisome, but that's a great way to put it. Price at the floor where the ceiling, I mean, there's no, similar to Pitts being a potential first rounder. I wouldn't be shocked to see Akers approaching first rounds next year if he goes out and gets 18 to 20 touches a game in the Rams offense. Like that's a gold mine of an opportunity. We just look no further than Todd Gurley just a few years ago, how great that could be. But yeah, I put the dead zone question mark because especially on underdog, we're seeing, Zeke Elliott, Breece Hall falling. Like, Zeke's a tricky one. I know how inefficient he started to get, but he still was the RB6 on a torn PCL. It's the offense that led the league in total yardage and points last year. And they continue to say keystone player, the focus of the backfield, 285 touches in every single year other than, actually over 300 opportunities every single year other than 2017 when he was suspended 6 games, still saw 280. I mean, the guy just gets work and a good offense. I get the whole be a year early versus be a year late. I still think this is a guy. He's still not that old. He's had big workloads. He's as healthy as can be, only 27 right now, and about as juicy of a situation. So I liked at the top where you said, like, you want to have at least 2 running backs through 4 rounds. Like 100%, I can't leave my 4 rounds. There are some good guys later. If you end up going 0 running back, yeah, don't reach on those Gibsons and Jacobs. That's just the dead zone. That's when it gets hideous. But to me, a Zeke, maybe even a Breece Hall, the Cam Akers toss out, like I think the dead zone's pushed back a little bit, at least on underdog. Those guys might go a little earlier in the home leagues on the Fantasy Pros stuff, but I don't mind the running backs at all. And I really like to have 3 out of my first 4 picks be those running backs, because I think it is a brutal drop off till around like 9 or 10 or so. I don't want any of those Jacobs, those Gibsons, especially with some of the receivers we're about to talk about going in that rounds like 5 through 7 range. I think there's some real strong candidates to be wide receiver ones. If you were going receiver in this range, is there any name that does stand out to you as a round 4 guy?
If Mike Williams is there, man, like I think he's a top 12 wide receiver, and it's just shocking to me to see some of the ADP. So I almost like, again, it's almost like I don't believe like that he'd even be available this late in the draft. But hey, if that's, I guess, what the ADP is going to tell us, I mean, absolutely. You could argue last season he was already, I don't know that he was overtaking Keenan Allen, but at this point, it doesn't really need to. If he's going to have more of the deep field stretcher role to begin with and getting a lot more red zone opportunities, like it's okay if he has 20 fewer targets on the season than Keenan. He can still make up for that, kind of like he did last year. So last year, I mean, just overall finish is not PPR points per game, but he was still top 20 in both. I just think, anytime you can get Justin Herbert's number 2, they just paid him big time, didn't add any real competition there. Like Mike Williams is someone that, and it's one of those things, man, like the critique is like, oh, you take out all these games where he went the hell off and what he do. It's like, come on, man. I think you can argue, like, I know, how many times are we gonna say freaking Scott Barrett in this podcast? But his like you just brought up specifically his upside article, and I think that was one of the points there that was like we kind of want someone that can give us these booms and stuff. It gets we just have this habit of remembering the bad things in life. So guys like Tyler Lockett, Mike Williams, and stuff, we're like, oh yeah, all those bad games. Like, well, the good ones that just single-handedly win your week are pretty cool as well. I would say out of the other guys, the one I've been consistently getting the most, I think he's my highest owned underdog receiver, is Terry McLaurin. Carson Wentz is the best quarterback of his career. You look at the deep ball ability. It's sad for sure.
It just makes you laugh, but it's true.
He is objectively the best one. And like Heineke was by far the league's worst deep ball passer last season. I mean, when he like unironically like waved Terry deeper and then underthrew him and got him concussed against the Cowboys. Like, I don't know if there's a play last season that just made me more pissed off than that. So, McLaurin got paid. Undisputed number 1. Like if Terry McLaurin gets 150, 60 targets, it's not going to surprise a single person. And I just think Wentz, man, like, okay, he's not great, but we have this inability to like just accept that someone's like a top 20 or a top 25 quarterback. If they're not top 10 or 12, like they just suck. And there's like nothing else to be said about it. And Wentz, man, my God, he's literally going as like the QB 29, 30 on a lot of these drafts. Like if you get Terry in like round 4 or whatever, and we'll talk about quarterbacks here in a second. On underdog in best ball, you need multiple quarterbacks just to help fill the bye. So it's like, again, I don't want to be the Wentz guy, but are you telling me like you really want to take like Tua or Trevor Lawrence in rounds 12 or 13 when you can get Wentz or Jared Goff in rounds 17, 18? Mm-hmm. I just think, again, rankings are fine, but having a tier-based strategy and just, again, being willing to kind of take values at the right spots of the draft, I think that's how you finish up a draft and you look at your lineup from top to bottom and you're just like, hell yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I will say on Williams too, I've come around on him a lot lately. I was reading an article about Herbert just being like, our offense changes without him. We need to get this guy back, pay him whatever it takes. Like, I love him. They've been working out like every day in the offseason. So to see him take it to another level, which is already kind of scary because he was a fringe wide receiver 1 last year. There's every chance he could overtake Keenan Allen as early as this year. He's getting up there in age for sure. I do love, in underdog, you're typically going to have to go a lot of these receivers that are also falling around 5 through 7, according to Fantasy Pros and your Yahoo drafts and all that. Because I tweeted out, like, I love Allen Robinson. And I say I was taking him in round 4 of every draft. People are like, why are you taking him in round 4? His ADP is 78. It's like, well, that's certainly not the case on underdog. I do love the Allen Robinson going to the the Rams, though, and he's falling in that round 5 through 7 range on this Fantasy Pros ADP. I'm all in on that. I would love to get – they've had two top 20 receivers in all but 1 year under Sean McVay. I think he's better than Robert Woods. He's already making highlight play after highlight play. You get – Stafford, by far the best quarterback of his career. He made Kenny fucking Golladay, the fakest alpha that's ever existed, a top 10 receiver. I think he could do it with both Kupp and A-Rob. I also love Sutton, Gabe Davis. Like this is why I like going to summarize our game plan so far. We've been pretty lockstep, and you should definitely have 2 running backs, maybe even 3. Definitely consider Kyle Pitts in round 3. And then you can hammer receivers from this round 5 through 7, where it's the Gibsons, the Jacobs, the running backs you just don't want. We've been kind of in lockstep on that, just to summarize what we've talked about. So I like A-Rob, Gabe Davis. I like Sutton in this range. He, again, going earlier in underdog for those of you that are more in tune to that. But in home leagues, you could probably hammer those 3 running backs and then get some of those receivers. Are there any of the names either I shouted out or some other names you'd like to provide for receivers going in this range, or other players you might target if it's not a receiver?
I'm starting to buy Chris Godwin and Michael Thomas. Starting to look at this range, man. Again, if they fall a little bit more, depending on the draft room and where they kind of are in the queue and stuff like that, I'm not against addressing other positions first, but it's just like, man, Godwin. I know they're gonna take him along slow, but like we were worried about him like not being suiting up until like November, man. At a minimum, for him to just be starting off the pup and now out there practicing, like. Yeah. Dude, if we knew he was fully healthy, like he'd be top 12, he'd be ahead of Evans, he'd be ahead of everyone. Michael Thomas is someone that once he's out there in week 1, he's getting 8 or 9 targets, from Jameis. We're gonna be ranking him a lot more. So again, I think a common theme with a lot of these guys we're talking about, and a couple more rounds, DeAndre Hopkins enters this conversation where I'm okay taking a risk on guys that I know are going to be, are being priced at their floor for one reason or another. And if we just get one thing to go our way, all of a sudden they are shooting up multiple rounds that we wouldn't be able to get them otherwise. So I think that's, again, a common theme here. So Chris Godwin, Michael Thomas, I think both of them, based on what we know now, can be treated as top 20 wide receivers. And hey, again, these are guys with potential alpha wide receiver 1 target shares. We've seen them do it before. Don't be afraid to take them a little bit ahead of, just some of these more number 2 types that, again, still have ADPs that are higher, because we were a lot more worried about these situations. But let's face it, in the last 10, 14 days, we've gotten fantastic news on both guys.
I think those are great names to shout out. Love it. Like potential alphas. Another alpha I see in that range might be Brandon Cooks as well, or maybe even Amon-Ra St. Brown, 2 guys that could easily pace their team. It's just, we could go down a list. I really just like that tier of receivers. I have no problem if I have 3 guys from that tier as my wide receiver 1, 2, and 3, and my running backs and Pitts. Like that's fine with me. I don't need a top 12 guy. Of course, if I get a Jefferson or a Kupp early, I won't pass them up. But I really find myself gravitating towards this tier in general. Almost 30% target share for Cooks in his games with Davis Mills. They've been lasered in all preseason so far. He's been the player of camp. That's what everybody's saying. I mean, it might be tough not to be in fucking Houston, but still, it's just great potential alphas here. And Amon-Ra, what he did at the stretch run last year too. So just a ton of great talent in here. I guess that's the summary here, is get those running backs early, because you're going to have some nice receiver depth. You did mention in your article too, you love Kyler Murray. Is he a guy like you'd forgo some of these receivers to make sure you get?
Sorry. Kyler Murray in rounds 5 or 6. That's exactly when I'm starting to look at quarterbacks, because wide receivers, man, I love Amon-Ra, Godwin, Cooks and those guys, but you will start to see them gone at this point. And when it starts to become like, okay, do I want this, low end wide receiver 3, Devontae Smith or freaking Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray? Yeah, that's when I want to pull the plug on these guys. So for me, Kyler Murray is like one of my highest owned quarterbacks over at Underdog, just because I think there's a pretty clear big 6 quarterbacks. Now I would even include Hurts in there. So Allen, Mahomes, Herbert, Kyler, Lamar, and Jalen Hurts. But you just consistently see Kyler, and Jalen Hurts is almost like catching up to Kyler at this point. Both these guys are just readily available a lot of times at the beginning of round 6 even. So one of those situations where, hey, if you've already gotten Mark Andrews, feel free to just stack with Lamar. But in redraft, stacking isn't nearly as important as it is in best ball. So again, it's just about realizing, like in these tiers, it's look, we all have Josh Allen ranked number 1, but why take Josh Allen in round 3 when you can get Kyler in round 6? Because then you start looking at the wide receiver difference. Like, in a in a vacuum, yeah, give me Josh Allen over these other guys, but we're not playing in a vacuum. We're playing like with actual, playing with actual opportunity costs. So yeah, man, I think again, Kyler Lamar right there, rounds 5 or 6. That's consistently where I've been trying to attack the quarterback range. If not, I still think bro, like this is another one. Like Trey Lance, I'm seeing ADP QB 13. Like not in the freaking leagues I've been playing in, but okay, I guess if that's going to be there, then by all means. So I would say if you can't get one of those top 6 quarterbacks, then I'm going after Trey Lance a few rounds later. And the latest guy I'm willing to go with is Justin Fields, but we'll get to him in a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. It kind of transitions us right perfectly into rounds 8 through 10. So at this point, I typically like to have my 3 running backs, 3 receivers, and either a cheat code quarterback, like you mentioned, or Kyle Pitts, a cheat code tight end. You got 7 picks in the books. That's typically how I find my builds. You never want to lock yourself, as you always say, play those tiers, find where the talent drops off, let it come to you. There's plenty of depth later. But typically I do find myself, especially with the Kyle Pitts edge, getting my quarterback in this rounds 8 through 10. You highlighted one of my favorites, Trey Lance. Always the Konami upside, sexy as hell. But there's also those like gunslingers, just like Brady throwing it 700 times a season. Like I know the Konami upside sexy, but also there's something nice to just like, especially if you go back-to-back quarterback and go like Lance and then Brady, who is always going to get you close to 20, if not 25. I love balancing those two out. So rounds 8 through 10 is really my sweet spot for the quarterback position, but I do feel some running backs, and as you mentioned in your article, some running backs tend to start reemerge. We can dip back into that running back pool, whereas we almost enter like a wide receiver dead zone in this type of range is how I view it, at least. So you mentioned Trey Lance. Is there some other guys, whether it's a running back, other quarterbacks you want to shout out that you really like in this range?
I think so. I don't know about you. I'm in a couple leagues where it's like redraft with a keeper or two, and you can usually keep them at the round value you got, or maybe the rounds start sliding, right? So I would say in those types of leagues, man, don't be afraid to get a James Cook or even Kenneth Walker in this range, because those are both guys with potential flaws for 2022, and that's why they're going, in the RB3, even borderline RB3 range. But Devin Singletary and Rashad Penny could both be completely out of the picture. In Seattle's case, like I hope that they have a plan in the future to eventually add like a really good quarterback there. So I think that problem we've seen how quarterback movement works these days. I mean, it wouldn't be shocking if they make a splurge for some, who the hell knows next year. So I wouldn't try to think too far into the future about, what offenses we know are going to be really good or really bad in Kenneth Walker's case. More so James Cook, though, just being a second round pick on the freaking Bills, man. And a lot of the things about him, just in terms of being the special pass catching back, like that's what we want. DeAndre Swift last year was objectively a terrible rusher. Like just pick any efficiency stat you want. Jamal Williams was much better. Didn't matter because of how good he is as a receiver. Yeah. I mean, Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara, we've never cared when these guys haven't been able to touch 200 carries more years than not, or they barely passed it because of all those targets. So, Dwayne McFarland always loves to say, Cam Newton didn't throw running backs until he had Christian McCaffrey. Could very well be the same case with Josh Allen and James Cook. And some of the size stuff, man, I understand BMI is a real thing and all that, but he's 5'11", 199. Devin Singletary is like 5'7", 203. Like, is it really, are we positive that James Cook can't handle 10, 12 carries per game either? So I just think that, again, both of those guys, where they're going, particularly James Cook is the one I've been leaning more towards. But yeah, they could definitely be guys that are firmly in, the RB2 range. Hell, a couple things go right, maybe even the RB1 range as early as 2023.
I think that's a great way to shout out those keeper costs as well. The one guy, similar profile to what you're talking about, the pass catching style at running back. I love Chase Edmonds in this range too. Nice. I think he could get, 35% of the carries and still be a top 20 running back because he'll catch 50, 60, maybe even 70 balls. Yes, I know Waddle and Hill are there, but he'll get a ton of space underneath to do some serious damage. So I really like Chase Edmonds in this range as well. And I did mention going back-to-back quarterbacks. I probably wouldn't do that in a redraft league. I actually had my first draft last night. And once you have your QB1 locked up, all the quarterbacks tend to fall. Nobody tends to dip. I mean, this is just my personal experience. But that seems to be, year after year. I got Kirk Cousins in round 20 last night.
You only need one. You only need one.
And you really only need one. Exactly.
If there's a value like that, Cousins in round 20, go right ahead. But you can just stream it. I'd say same thing at tight end. And then also just I try to make this as clear as possible in the article. But do not draft a kicker or defense if you do not have to. And this is not, I do slander kickers a lot. But this just, hey, whatever guy you're looking to draft will almost assure only idiots are going to, if someone in your league wants to carry multiple kickers or defenses, let them. You can pick up whoever, stream whoever. They are the easiest and most doable positions to stream. Take backup running backs and fill up your entire roster. Cut them before week 1 if the starter doesn't get hurt. Otherwise, again, you're like, there's no way those kickers and defenses are going to move up and down the ranks between now and then. You could find yourself a gem with some of these late round running backs, even guys like Boston Scott, Matt Breida, like even your non-traditional, even once the really good handcuffs are gone. Again, if you're some leagues do make you fill up your roster and fill up your starting lineup, and they won't let you do it. In that case, okay, then do your thing. But yeah, can't stress enough. Do not be the guy that takes freaking Justin Tucker in round 11. It just does not make any sense.
Stupid. I 100% agreement. Yeah, stack that roster with as much potential value gainers as you can, as long as your league allows it. 100%. Would love that. Yeah, I think that's a great point there. So moving towards, I guess the one guy I did want to touch upon in this last range too is you're the president of the fan club, Mr. Cordarrelle Patterson. I know he goes a bit earlier in redraft, but I've seen him there in underdog as late as 9, 10 even. Like I'm scooping him. I'm on the fan club with you there if I'm getting him at that price. You getting a lot of him this year, or what's your thoughts on Patterson?
Yeah, I did a whole team preview series earlier this off season. I've broke them all down with Dwayne, so I've kind of written about every player at this point. So at this point, I'm doing more articles, like trying to look at just finding the value at ADP and more kind of specific draft strategy stuff. So before this morning, I was working on 2, finishing up like who is this year's PPR exploiter running back, and then the other one was who are some running backs like really undervalued just based on their workload relative to their ADP. And Cordarrelle Patterson's popping up in both, man. I don't get what the issue with this guy is. Again, round 4, round 5, if you're trying to put him in the low end RB2, I would understand the hesitancy with that. But when you look at him right now, to your point on underdog, really going outside the top 36 running backs right now, the only cheaper starting running back in all of fantasy at this point is whoever the hell ends up winning out in Houston. Maybe Dameon Pierce, maybe Rex Burkhead. I don't know, but we have CPAT there coming off a season where before he got injured, remember, he sprained his ankle pretty badly against the Cowboys. Overall RB7, RB6 PPR points per game after the injury. Comes back, plays through it. I don't think we give guys enough credit for doing this. Same thing happened with Zeke last year, but Derrick Henry and DeAndre Swift, they missed half the season, but we don't care because they weren't, nuking our lineup while playing badly, while being hurt. Even while he was playing hurt, man, RB20 overall, RB31 per game. So now we just have an even bigger drop off. They added 0 competition. Damian Williams on a minimum deal, 5th round running back Tyler Algier, who is fine, but come on, man. Like there's like 200 carries and targets available from Mike Davis leaving. So I don't see any problem with Dame or Algier like getting some of that work, but Patterson's the one that got paid. He's got one of their, I think, top 10 or 12 biggest contracts on the team. The quarterback downgrade, okay, that's all being priced into this. And again, round 8, round 9, I just think that, again, once you start comparing him to guys like Josh Jacobs and Antonio Gibson, who I think you could argue have less fantasy-friendly roles because of their lack of a pass-catching role. In full PPR, I just think Cordarrelle Patterson makes a ton of sense, man. Again, he is one of the biggest poppers in terms of looking at projections and just the projected opportunity versus their ADP, as well as looking at projections, which guys have the biggest boost going from standard to PPR. So, we're talking now like as general PPR 12-man leagues, but always got to be sure and know those rules because there are guys like Cordarrelle Patterson. Let me see who the other PPR running backs were. DeAndre Swift, Cordarrelle Patterson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and James Cook were 4 guys that were just really booming up, going from standard to the PPR. Because we see that, man. Like last year, everyone loved DeAndre Swift in PPR, RB10 per game, RB20 in standard. I mean, Eckler in 2020 was the PPR RB13 standard, RB25. Literally one change in your scoring setting can be a difference between an RB1 and like almost an RB3.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, know those settings for sure. 100%. All these nuggets of wisdom. I know we're up against it here. I want to make sure I get some time to run you through the no huddle. There's nobody I like better on the no huddle on your feet. You're perfect with it. But you want to just toss out whether it's 11 through 15, whether it's 16 through 20, any of like the last couple of rounds, late round upside. If there's 1 or 2 players you find yourself landing more than any, what's a last round sleeper for us?
Mentioned Darrell Henderson. I just think he's too cheap handcuff upside alone, man. He's just going past like Rounds Laird and Alexander Madison and guys that don't even have his chance to kind of have the similar standalone value. Same thing. Darrell Henderson and Jamal Williams are my two most drafted late round running backs. I just think both these guys have a chance at getting double digit combined carries and targets per game. I get it. Not a role that you're thrilled about starting, but we've been in those big time, start 13 guys type of leagues. And hey, if you can get 10 plus carries and targets during some of these bye weeks, you're feeling okay sometimes. So I think, again, with that on top of their potential to immediately be in the RB2 range if just one injury away, I think well worth it. Also, Jahan Dotson is someone that, and Rondale Moore, I think these are just two guys that I don't think they don't need much to go right in order to have triple digit targets as early as this season, just based on all the offseason moves. Loving both of those. And any other final targets? Sorry. Jalen Tolbert, Joshua Palmer, Isaiah McKenzie. These are all wide receiver threes that I think are in the sort of offenses where we should actually be willing to embrace the wide receiver three. I mean, Tolbert, we're already seeing it with Gallup banged up and Washington out, how he could be thrust into be the number two. It looks like Palmer is on the verge of, unseating Guyton completely. Even if he doesn't, he's one injury, I think, to either Keenan or Mike away from really being elevated in a hurry. Isaiah McKenzie, shooting up the ranks, but probably should be, man. Like at a minimum, he should be going where Jamison Crowder was kind of going before. So again, all those guys, you could argue discount versions of like what we thought Russell Gage was going to be.
100%. We're on lockstep. My audience has heard me talk about all those guys far too often, so I have nothing else to add. The only guy in the same type of mold might be KJ Osborne if something ever happened to either of the Vikings guys. If that becomes as a pass-happy offense, but I've talked about him plenty. Let's hit the no huddle. You down for it, Hartitz?
Let's do it.
All righty, so no huddle time. The first 5 picks in every 2022 draft should be.
First 5 picks. Okay. Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase.
The late round league-winning QB.
It's Trey Lance if the QB 13 ADP thing is real. If not, and you want to go by like double-digit rounds, it's Justin Fields.
Who gained the most value this offseason?
CD Lamb's the first name that pops into my head, not to be an available target slave, but my goodness, look at all those available targets. I would say in terms of just the most value up and down, the Denver Bronco wide receivers, Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy.
Absolutely. Who lost the most value this offseason?
It's really been a rough one for, Ryan Tannehill losing AJ Brown sticks out for me. I don't know if it's like the most value, but this Tannehill has been pretty consistent QB1 in Tennessee, and now he's going like QB 24 or something. And as much as I do think like at that point he's a value, it's just really tough to see a sort of boom scenario for Tannehill anymore.
The highest scoring rookie after Breece Hall will be.
I'm going to go with James Cook. Keep chasing that. Again, like 150 carries. If the dude gets 70, 80 targets somehow, doesn't matter. And we might be overconfident in our I like Gabriel Davis. I'm not out on him, but I'm just saying everything in that offense behind Stephon Diggs is truly a mystery. So guys, Davis is priced up, but guys like James Cook, Isaiah McKenzie, even Dawson Knox, there is a scenario where we see them actually take that leap into the number 2 pass game option. And again, like if we're going to be throwing darts at an offense, man, might as well be the freaking Bills.
Absolutely. Good transition to Gabe Davis. Yay or nay?
I'm yay. I do think scoring touchdowns is a bit of a skill. It's tough for me to quantify that, but I think anyone that's actually laced up the click, we see it, man. Like again, and there's an exception like Julio Jones from time to time. Not trying to say he's not a great player or anything, but I just think that, when I see the comp, like, oh, look at Gabriel Davis versus Jerry Jeudy. What's the difference? Like, 13 touchdowns is the difference. And, as much as you want to just chalk that up to a QB, I didn't see Tim Patrick having the same sort of problem. So Gabriel Davis, again, if they had added any competition other than Khalil Shakur, who's 5th round pick, come on, like we've seen John Brown. We saw Emmanuel Sanders for stretches like be productive in this offense. When they were rotating, no one could do it. They're not going to be rotating. We've heard from every source he's going to be the number 2 guy. I think Gabriel Davis going right in that low end borderline wide receiver 2 range. It makes a lot of sense, man. We have concerns with him just like everyone else. I'm yay on Gabriel Davis.
Nice. It probably won't be a 2022 Cooper Kupp, but if there was, it would be
Cortland Sutton. But I appreciate your there's not Cooper Kupp every year. It's not James Robinson every year. Chill with this. I'll go with Cortland Sutton though.
the free agent or traded player that feasts in their new home.
I would love to see AJ Brown just go
Yeah.
the absolute hell off. He's already been dealing with, not that many targets over the years. Jalen Hurts, I think, is better than a lot of people give him credit for. I do have my concerns there. He's only like my wide receiver 13, I believe, but we'll go with AJB.
Nice. 101 in fast food.
Steak and Shake. Love me some Steak and Shake.
Nice. Early round 1 to 2 bust.
I could see Deebo Samuel really struggling to return the same value this year. I think moving on to Trey Lance, I think it's possible that with the healthier backfield, we see Deebo, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle have a very similar number of targets each, and I think they'll all be really efficient with it. But man, I'm not convinced that Deebo is necessarily just going to be that featured ahead of everyone else in an offense with a lot of playmakers everywhere that moves out of slow pace, and that's going to run the ball a lot. So I can see Deebo being incredible with, 100 touches instead of 160 and people not being happy about it.
Who's the mid-rounder that then ascends to those 2023 early rounds?
Travis Etienne, if he's still going into mid rounds. I mean, I think with the James Robinson news, we're seeing him still going round 4 every once in a while, round 5. So I know he's already going a little bit early, but I really think Etienne, basically, even with James Robinson there, can just be the AFC's version of DeAndre Swift. So if we see that play out, I think Etienne's going to be knocking on the round 1 door in full PPR next year.
Nice. You already went over all of these, but pick one if you want that you haven't shouted out yet at a running back, receiver, or tight end that's a late round league winner.
Jamal Williams just being super late. I know last year when Swift got hurt, we didn't see Jamal really ball out. But if we're looking for this year's version of James Conner, I do think it's Jamal, where he has the 3 down. We've seen him play all 3 downs in Green Bay before. I think he's good enough to do it. And he looks like the goal line back in this offense. Now, can the Lions be good enough to kind of supply more red zone opportunities than they did last year? Remains to be seen. But, all this restore the roar hype, I would hope that the offense would take a little bit step forward if all that's going to be true. Wide receiver, I'll go with Joshua Palmer again. Like Keenan and Mike, let's face it, if we had to pick 2 wide receivers to stay healthy the entire year, I'm not so sure that many would be picking that duo. Joshua Palmer, man, if we can now get Justin Herbert's number 2 receiver, that'd be quite the lift. Tight end, I think I could see, like contenders for this year's Dawson Knox or like Robert Tonyan. I think there's a few. Gerald Everett being with Justin Herbert makes sense. David Njoku potentially on Deshaun Watson. Hayden Hurst, though, is like the cheapest one that right now. Drew Sample just got hurt too. Like Hayden Hurst has been going outside the top 20 tight ends all off season. And, if we're looking at tight ends that can maybe flirt with 8 to 10 touchdowns on 70 targets, might as well be the one catching balls from the most accurate quarterback in the league in Joe Burrow.
Love it. It's the greatest TV show of all time.
The Sopranos.
Oh, so I just did this offseason for the first time. Oh, my God. So fucking good.
Took you this long? Yeah, man,
I know. I'm an idiot. I don't know why. I need to rewatch.
You got here. It's okay. It's okay.
I got there eventually. Exactly. What do you think is the most important coaching hire for 2022?
Brian Dable / everything that the Giants did. We actually just had Evan Sova on the PFF Fantasy Football podcast with Dre McFarland and myself. And I asked Evan, when was the last time the Giants kind of made this long of a string of seemingly pretty good decisions in their front office, and he was just long time. So it is one of those things we just want to be like, oh, it's the Giants again. But shout out Kyle Dvorak over at NBC Sports Edge writing an article. What if the Giants are really good? There are some enticing pieces in that offense, and they are all pretty cheap. Saquon, Kadarius Toney, maybe a little bit of Wan'Dale Robinson too. You could imagine, my friend.
Absolutely. 15 now. The most important preseason story or battle you're monitoring closest?
There's a lot of them. I just had 32 training camp takeaways from the first week, one for each team article. Check that out on PFF.com. Yeah. I'll be very interested to see if Tony Pollard can actually. Last year, he had over 1,000 yards, even with Zeke playing 17 games. And I think there's still a chance that we could see him have even positive touchdown regression, basically, which I know isn't, you can just say touchdown regression and it still be positive. So sorry, nerds, but with Pollard there, man, look, I'm not saying he's going to overtake Zeke. I don't really think that's going to happen. I heard you talk. I think Zeke's fine in round 4, but we know they're going to play Zeke ahead of Tony Pollard. Will they play Noah Brown, Jake Ferguson, and these other guys that had Tony Pollard, that would be a new low for me. Like I understood Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, even Cedric Wilson was really good.
Yeah.
Now we're going to be asking them to put a rookie tight end or, their nominal fifth wide receiver, who's basically an H-back, and Noah Brown out there ahead of Tony Pollard. I'm not sure they'll do that. And again, Tony Pollard, if he only gets like 3 or 4 more carries and targets per game, now we're talking about a guy flirting with 15 per week, and that would be some real nice standalone value for someone that we already know has league winning upside if something happens to Zeke. So if we do see, let's say the Cowboys have 20 first team snaps and they find a way to get Pollard out there on 15 of them or something, he's gonna be I think rising up even higher than he already is.
Love it. Who's the year 2 wide receiver blow up? You can't pick Chase or Waddle. That's too easy. But out of the rest of the crew, who do you like the most?
The year 2 one. I'll go with Rondale Moore where he's going. And Cliff Kingsbury, before or after the Marquise Brown trade, has been consistent that without Christian Kirk there, they view Rondale as their full-time slot. It was an offense that even when Hopkins was healthy last year, really spread the ball around. So I think Rondale, man, we're looking at Benjamin, Keontae Ingram, like Darrell Williams. What if it's Rondale Moore that gets a lot of those designed quick hitting running back-esque snaps and targets that Chase Edmonds was getting in the past? So I think Rondale has a chance to be like, I don't want to say more dynamic because I think he was very good in his own right, but like kind of like what Robert Woods was to the Rams, where we're getting like 100 to 110 targets plus 15 to 20 rush attempts potentially that guys that position usually don't get. So I think Rondale going pretty much cheaper than he was last year at this point, despite having a much easier pathway to the slot role.
Love it. Who's the player you would most want to have a drink with and hang out with?
Oh, Cordero Patterson. Absolutely. No hesitation.
I love it. What's your drink of choice? And what do you think Patterson's drinking?
Ooh. Hennessy, maybe. I'm not sure with that. I'm going with whiskey. I usually drink the Conor McGregor Proper 12. Used to drink it more so just because I was a big Conor stan back in 2015, 2016 when he was going crazy. But I'll be honest, like now I just kind of like the taste, and I'll take it over Jameson. So give me some Proper 12 whiskey if I'm drinking some liquor. Otherwise, I've been loving Oberon beer lately.
Oh, nice. And you won't leave your 2022 drafts without.
Probably already said the guys.
That's all good. You can repeat.
Again, every single draft I enter, Jamal Williams ends up being a value. It's not the sexiest pick, but again, he's someone that we project like opportunity rise to be the RB 36, and he's going outside the top 50 running backs. Jamal Williams.
And your 2020, the boldest 2022 prediction you got.
Ooh. This one's just come to my head right now. I'll say Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill fall outside the top 20 wide receivers. And, I have Tyreek ranked higher than that, but it is a little something, man, where we're looking at this offense, and it's one of the wild reasons why I think it's people reaching on Tua. I don't understand at all how you can really get behind that. We just saw Jimmy G lead the league in yards per attempt. Like, who the hell ever wanted to play Jimmy G? Tua has never, even going back to Alabama, rushed for 50 yards in a game. Like, he's not a dual threat quarterback at all. He is a pocket passer in an offense that, based on what we saw, and it's tough for them, Shanahan, the McVay, and the LaFleur coaching trees to know what the offensive coordinators are going to do, because we know the head coaches were the ones calling plays. But those 49ers offenses were run first, and they were slow paced, and they won with extreme efficiency. That's something that Waddle didn't exactly show off last year. He had insane volume, and that worked out. Tyreek had the great efficiency. Mostly with Patrick Mahomes. I saw the Alex Smith year and everything, but I just think anytime we have potential volume issues, again, when you need to be betting on players to be, again, we want every single player to have a great workload and a great offense with awesome talent, and there's not that many of those players. And I think Tyreek and Waddle's maybe offensive environment and the volume have bigger question marks than we're giving credit for.
Both are fades for me, if that makes you feel any better. So I like the prediction. Thank you again so much, Hartitz. It's always a pleasure chatting ball with you. If you want to just give our listeners one more reminder where they can follow you, where they can find your work, anything else you'd like to pump.
At I Heard It's PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, everything on PFF.com. Check out the app when we have it out there again. I think it's going to be a lot of help just in day-to-day preparation. You want to know basically just a player's profile. It's going to be there for you, and also some really cool stuff we're trying to do, helping you with your draft. So great day to be great. My brother, appreciate you having me on as always.
Thanks again so much, Hart. It's always a pleasure. You're just the absolute man to talk ball with every single time. My favorite show of the year. Thanks again, brother. Have a great rest of your week and rest of the preseason. Best of luck this year.
You too, man. Take care.
Cheers. Thank you. All right, Wolfpack, thanks again for Ian for joining. What a great show, as it always is, giving you that round-by-round preview of what you should do each time. Hit your questions real quick. Looks like just a bunch of people saying hello as they were tuned in, but if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. What's up, Bruce? Showing up before we even get live. I love to see that. What a legend, Bruce K. Thank you so much. Let's get it on Indeed. Yo, Jeremiah, it's been a minute since we caught up, man. So love to see you back here. Love to chat some ball. Let me know when those drafts are coming up. We will make sure to crush it. Let's get those likes up. Tunes out. You're better at me than hyping it up. I appreciate that, man, to remind me. What up, Mitch? Great to see the Wolfpack legends, Charlie Menelakis. Everybody's coming out to see Hartitz. Love it, Wolfpack. Good to see you, brother. What's going on, Mitch? What's going on, Charlie? You guys are legends. Great stuff. Hartitz over 150.5 receptions and 50.5 TDs for JSN. My bad to miss that one. CJ, well, we had him here. I'm sure you'll hit the overs. Smash those there, right? At work trying to watch, most likely watch later. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate you tuning in, as you always do. Thank you, Rose Street, for reminding everyone to like and subscribe. If you enjoyed the content today, you enjoy what you're hearing, and you haven't already, hit that thumbs up, or especially if you're not part of the Wolfpack. We have so many great guests lined up for the rest of the summer here as we get you ready to dominate your 2022 draft. So please consider subscribing if you like what you heard. I haven't even pumped it yet, but if you're at this point of the show, I will be dropping my guide before the preseason games. I know it keeps getting pushed back just a little bit, but I want to make sure it's great. There's a lot of updates that went into it this weekend, so I had to make sure it's the most up-to-date information before I release it to you guys. So I'd say by tomorrow, Wednesday, certainly by Thursday kickoff. I know all your drafts are coming up, but if you want the Wolfpack guide, we have all my projections, all my round-by-round, more in-depth than what you heard here, a lot more players as well. So check that out. If you're here this long, you're probably were planning to anyways, but I would mean the world to support the site with that. What's up, Jack? Great to see you, brother. We are back, baby. Let's go. Monty highlights. Zach Wilson will be, that is bold stuff. I am not personally on the Zach Wilson train, Monty. I mean, he's got all the measurables, the arm, he's got some mobility. He's got the weapons all around him. I just don't think he's good. I think he doesn't have the decision-making. He doesn't have he has all the tangibles, doesn't have the intangibles, in my opinion, the ability. Maybe he'll prove me wrong, and certainly he's got the ability to greatly prove me wrong, but we will see. We've got our love chat bot showing up. I'll make sure to block that user, but always good stuff. Get us some good interaction there, huh? Thank you. After Schultz, I feel like there's no tight ends. I'm with you, Tunes. That's why I love, as Hartitz brought up today, Kyle Pitts, round 3, could be such a huge edge, but I do really like round 6 Schultz. In fact, I've gotten him more often just because Kamara was falling to round 3 for so long. I couldn't pass up that. So I have more Schultz than I do Kyle Pitts. That's probably going to balance out as we move forward in the offseason here, though. I'm starting to hammer Kyle Pitts where he goes. But yeah, I think that's the real cutoff point. I don't hate Tunes, Dawson Knox in round like 9-10 range. Dallas Goedert's also in that range. Like, I do think they're kind of like a mini tier before a real just, if I don't get one of those two in round 9-10, I actually end up doing all my underdog drafts with the last 3 rounds being tight ends. Hayden Hurst, Kyle Rudolph, Mo Alley Cox. These offenses I think are going to be pretty solid and ultimately provide some touchdown opportunities. I just take 3 of them and just hope I end up getting, a touchdown a week from one of those guys. Gerald Everett, as Hartitz mentioned as well, a little bit earlier than those guys. Donald Parham also, though, fits into that mold for the Chargers. Both those guys could be touchdown threats. So I don't even know if I love Everett quite as much as I did before Parham started exploding in camp. He's hurt, though, so who knows? Something to monitor. But definitely, I'm with you. There's like those 6, Kittle being in that top, 5-6 range, then Knox and Goddard, and then it's just wait, don't worry, just punt. Irv Smith could really make a difference if he's healthy, but when has he ever been fucking healthy? Looking at the Ravens wide receiver core, how you feel about Bateman and Proche? So, Brad, great question. I think the pie is going to shrink. It's already a small pie. They did chuck a ton last year. honestly, weirdly, more when they had Huntley in than when they had Lamar Jackson. Every offseason move suggests they want to get back to that ground pound, 2019, where they led the league with 598 freaking rushing attempts, like insanity. Sounds like that's what they're trying to move their offense more towards, in which case the pie is going to shrink. And so I really like Bateman. I think Bateman's a really solid player. He'll be the number one target alongside Andrews. I don't know that there'll be much else beyond them. I think Proche is like a last-round best roll stab. He's getting deep in practice. They're making highlight plays often. Like, I think he's a good player, a good dynasty pickup, a good stash. But I don't know that there will ever be a week in like a redraft where you have to actually put him into your lineup and be like, this is the one I pray he catches a 50-yard bomb. I don't think he's going to have any value in that sense. Again, maybe underdog, DraftKings best ball, a interesting last-round stab because he'll probably have a few 20-point weeks. But I don't know that there will ever be a way you can determine that. I'm not in on Duvernay. I don't think Duvernay is a player. I'm much more intrigued by Proche than I am Duvernay. But Bateman and Andrews, I'm okay with. But even then, I don't have a ton of the Ravens passing game options. I kind of like J.K. Dobbins at his price, and that's about it for the Ravens offense. All righty, folks. That was the last question. That was the last comment. If you have more, though, you can find me at Roto Street Wolf. The DMs are open, as always. So shoot me any questions you have. We'll be live tomorrow with Ian's co-host, Dwayne McFarland, a fantastic mind. It's the first time he's ever come on here. So please be here. Give him a warm welcome. We're going to be talking about round 7 or beyond with league winning upside. Who has it? How do you track it? What's the common traits of a league winner from late rounds? It's going to be a great show. He is, if you haven't heard him, phenomenal. You should go listen to him and Ian each and every week at Pro Football Focus. But he's also been popping on Dwayne on, the Establish the Run, great running back preview with Dwayne. That's kind of what put me on to him. So come on back tomorrow. Check it out. Angel, I see your question. I'll get it in for you. Why not? AJ Dillon and Tony Paul be RB3 this year. I think they are like the classic flex with league winning upside, like the ultimate handcuff with benefits. I think both will have enough of a role that you could use them in your lineups. They're not ideal for me. Again, I like my running back 3 to come in those first 3 rounds where I'm getting 18 to 20 touches. I still think there's some guys, James Conner being the round 3 guy Ian Hartitz talked about today. I like doing that. And then I still like getting AJ Dillon or Pollard as my running back 4 to have that upside. But I've always been just hammer running backs. So that's how it goes with me. But if Zeke or Aaron Jones miss time, both of those guys are 30-point type of upside players. Both are so immensely talented. One or the other, it's AJ Dillon for me. They're saying he's working far more as a receiver already, which has me a little bit nervous about Aaron Jones in round 2. I love the player, but if AJ Dillon's seeing the same workload or similar, like 55-45, he's going to be a steal at his price, whereas Jones might be a little too overpriced. But I like both those guys as RB3s in a vacuum. That means you probably have really good receivers or Kyle Pitts as well to go with it. So, yeah, those guys are very, very acceptable running back 3s. It's kind of those are the only guys in the dead zone. I don't want Gibson. I don't want Jacobs. Those are the 2 guys, the 2 profiles I gravitate towards, especially Dillon there. All right, again, Wolfpack, thanks again so much. You find all my rankings at rotostreetjournal.com/bigboard. Just the homepage is rotostreetjournal.com. Tons of great articles, tons of great new writers giving you all the goods you need to dominate your fantasy football leagues. I'll be live again tomorrow, as we mentioned with Dwayne, and throughout the summer at their availability. Just popping on whenever the guests are available. Have them coming on. Got the beat writers starting to get scheduled too. Make sure you're subscribed. If you haven't already, please consider hitting that like button to help us continue to get out to more people. I'm the Wolf, a world full of fancy sheep. Be the Wolf, guys. Later.